Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a deep dive into the world of college admissions.
I'm Mark Stucker, and I'm the founder and producer. Our mission is to make college knowledge available to all. We care deeply about your kid. We believe college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. We believe in being genuine and transparent. We are committed to covering a variety of topics, including the tough subjects. Thanks to your generosity, we're committed to providing a minimum of 10 hours of fresh, commercial-free content every month, with episodes every Monday and Thursday. We have a variety of co-hosts because we believe and value diverse perspectives. You're our listening family, and we get great joy every time we meet with you, as we do our best to give you tools so your students can soar and reach their limitless potential. Good morning, friends. Can you believe we are 11 days away from Christmas? That means the end of the year is almost here. And it also means that we are only 14 days away from episode 600. If you're new to our podcast, I encourage you to go back and listen to episode 500. We did something special. You, our listeners, were the contributors. We crowdsourced our wisdom and shared it with each other. The impact was so positive, I decided to make it a new tradition. So if you want to contribute to episode 600, you just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK. You'll see a big orange button. Share any tip that's helped you, your student, that you want to share with our listening family. Now, you have until December 24th or Christmas Eve, that's 10 days from today, to contribute. That's the last day that we can take contributions that can make the production timeline. So if you want to contribute, go for it. Now, a new YCBK Plus comes out. If you're new to our podcast, what's YCBK Plus? It's our newsletter. It's where we include articles we never had a chance to discuss that are not behind a paywall that we think would be of interest to our listeners. And so you can sign up for YCBK Plus by just going to yourcollegeboundkid.com. You'll go to the About YCBK page and you'll see YCBK Plus. And there's a new monthly edition coming out this week. Friends, I want to share with you a few things that were clearly apparent from the 507 of you who completed our survey. And I want you to know we're listening to you. One is you'd like to see more focus on athletics and a little more focus on finances. So I want you to know I've lined up several amazing guests for 2026. I'm really excited about these interviewees, thought leaders in their field on both athletics and finances. And for one of them in particular, I've set it up so that you're going to send in questions. We've done this before. Just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK and ask your really hard questions around athletics and athletic recruitment. And I'm going to have a specialist who's going to come on and answer your questions. So if you want your voice heard, it can be anything from Olympic level to the lowest level of D3. Go ahead, ask your questions, and we're going to get to that in a really early part of 2026. We've got a couple people lined up on athletics, so I'm excited about that. But just want to let you know, you spoke, and we heard, and we aim to please. Friends, on today's episode is something special we haven't done before. First of all, we have a brand new contributor who will not only be coming on one time, very excited to introduce you to Carter Delloro, co-director of college counseling at the Marymount School of New York. And we're going to have a debate about the wisdom and value of early decision. Now, we've never quite done something like this. It's an in the news because we're discussing a New York Times article that many of you sent in to me this week. It's a question from a listener that was sent in on the topic of early decision. And it's a debate. So all in one. And then the second part's also really a debate. It's the final segment with Evan Mandery. It's mostly a debate about how much value is in a name. We have a debate, Evan and I, going toe-to-toe about the importance of prestige in the name of the school when it comes to career incomes. Okay, friends, let's dive right in.
And now it's time for Hot Topics in the News.
Friends, you're about to meet Carter Delloro, and he's currently the co-director of college counseling at Marymount School of New York. We start out with Carter giving his biography. Then I read an article that dropped this week from the New York Times that many of you sent out to me and asked, can you discuss this on the podcast? The article is about early decision, and I read it. Then we play a speak pipe entry from Sean, a great guy who both Vince and I know, that offers a different perspective from the article. And then Carter and I have a discussion on the merits of the article versus the merits of the voicemail Sean sent in. A debate about the value of early decision. Listen and enjoy. Friends, I am very excited. We're always trying to bring you new things, and you're going to hear from a new person today, someone who I hold in high regard. Someone who Julia holds in very high regard, Carter Delloro. Welcome to your College Bound Kid podcast.
Hi, Mark. Thank you for having me. Long-time listener, excited to be on the show for the first time.
Great. So, Carter, start by giving your background. I think that'll be really helpful. I always think it's helpful to understand the context from which you'll speak. And then after you do that, I'll get into a little bit about what we're going to talk about today.
Sure. Yeah, I'll try to do a quick overview. I'm sort of originally from Connecticut, but went to college out at Pomona College in California. I was excited to see a new part of the country and ended up working in admissions there for 3 years after I graduated. Left to go to grad school, ended up back in the field at Occidental College, where I was focused on international admissions for most of the time that I was there. And then about 10 years ago, switched over to the high school side. So I've worked at a couple of boarding schools, Taft School in Connecticut, Cranbrook School in Michigan, worked at a now defunct girls' school north of Boston. And now I'm the co-director of college counseling at the Marymount School of New York.
No, and that's just a fantastic background. Our regular listeners know I love people who have been on both sides of the desk. I feel like they have a really interesting perspective. They have both the admission side and the counseling side. But you also bring another really nice dimension. Besides that, you've been on the West Coast, right? Experience in Pomona and Occidental. And then also your international recruitment. That brings a whole other dimension. And then you've been in the middle of the country, Cranbrook, that's Michigan. And now you're on the East Coast. So you've got East Coast, Midwest, West Coast, and international experience. So it's a really good background. Julia's our only other current school-based college counselor in our rotation. And Julia's extremely busy and hasn't been able to contribute as much now as she has in the past. Once the season gets over, you'll be hearing a lot more of Julia. But I really felt like we needed another school-based counselor, both sides of the desk with your kinds of experience. So I was really happy when you agreed to be a little bit of a regular in our rotation here, Carter.
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
I'm curious. Tell me a little bit more about your international admissions experience. Obviously, with doing that meant you did international travel. What was your international travel like, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, let's see. I did 2 trips through Latin America. And so visiting places like Brazil, Argentina, Peru, Ecuador, up into Costa Rica. And also a month-long tour in East Asia through China, Singapore, Vietnam, Hong Kong. And it really was wonderful to get to see, to visit high schools, meet with college counselors, meet with students all over the world who were interested in American higher education, whether they were American citizens abroad or international students who felt compelled for whatever reason to try to come to the United States to further their education. It was just a wonderful experience. And then being able to read all of the applications to Occidental, because, through that experience, just allowed me to hear stories of people from all over the world. And it really is such an eye-opening experience. I feel like working in college admissions in general just opened my eyes to so many different paths through the world, and the international piece really just multiplied that significantly from the domestic reading that I'd been doing.
Vince, as you know, did admissions at Occidental. He's an Occidental grad, so we're getting a lot of Occidental here. It's all good. It's a good place. It's a good place. Yeah. So I have to ask you a question that I always like to ask anyone, and that is, what did you learn when you flipped to the other side of the desk? But in your case, we could also maybe handle it both ways. What did you learn when you went first to the admission side, and then when you flipped to the counseling side and you're sending kids? What were some of the your takeaways? Because it's like a coin, right? Both sides are important to the coin, but they are different perspectives. You get a different perspective when you're sending kids versus receiving, even that it's all really admissions work.
Yeah, absolutely. Joining an admissions team, I had the privilege at Pomona of being a senior interviewer in my final year of college. And the real highlight of that experience for me, in addition to the students that I got to meet and the interview skills that I learned, was getting to sit in on committee, particularly the early decision committee, and see the team there made a point of allowing the students to come in for the discussions of the kids that we had interviewed. And so getting to sort of see how the piece that I was involved with fit into the larger puzzle was so exciting. And so I had not necessarily been planning on going into education, but I got bit by the bug in that moment. And so, I guess that experience, I went to a public high school. I think, we in Connecticut, we had a lot of students going to a lot of selected places, but traveling for an admissions office, I got to see so many different kinds of schools. I got to go around the country. I visited Northern California and Texas and Washington State, and of course my home territory of Connecticut, and seeing independent schools, charter schools, magnets, all different sorts of places. Learning what a CBO was, and being able to just try to facilitate students that wanted to come to these institutions that I really believed in, still believe in. And so that was a really special experience to get to have. Switching over to the high school side, you get to see the kids for who they really are. In the college side, I think we were always seeing everybody's best foot, so to speak. And in high school, able to really get to know my students, their families super deeply. And the thing that I really appreciate about it is that this is such a complicated, often stressful experience for students and for their families. It brings up all sorts of emotions and concerns and questions. And I love being able to help guide students and their families through that process, come out on the other side, ideally with their intended outcome, but certainly with a better understanding of who they are and how they work. That piece is so rewarding, and something that I wasn't able to get into in as much depth when I was working on the college side.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. Another double perspective you have is public school kid who's now been in a lot of private school spaces, including religious and non-religious affiliated. So that's another couple different buckets. So I love diverse perspectives. I think they just broaden your outlook on life and this whole admission space. So, friends, Carter has a lot of passions. One of the things he feels very strongly about is, what in the world are we doing to our kids' mental health these days? And so you'll probably hear him addressing that a fair amount. But before we dive into this article today, anything else you want to share?
No, I'm excited to get the conversation going.
I have a question for you. Do you mind saying when you were at Pomona, what years? Are you comfortable with that?
Sure. Yeah, I graduated in the class of 2007, and I started right away. So I was working in the admissions office there from 2007 to 2010. And
did you overlap with Jess Lord at all, or did you just miss Jess?
Jess was there when I was a student.
Okay.
So I knew him as
Jess.
a student worker. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Jess went to Westtown School, where Susan and I were, and he
Right.
was our Westtown rep at Pomona for a while, and then he's been at Haverford College now, running that office for like 19 years or something like that.
I know. It's impressive.
What about the Mensons? Does that name sound familiar to you? I don't know, Tamina Menson, her sister. Did you know the Mensons at all? It's another one of our students that was in that office at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Tamina was my supervisor as a senior interviewer, and then
Wow.
a close colleague for the time that I was there.
Wow. Small world. Small world.
Yep.
All right, friends, let's stop this inside baseball. So, what we're going to do today, and this, I'm sure is going to extend I'll probably extend it a couple episodes, but I think it's going to be interesting for you. We're going to talk about early decision. There's an opinion piece that ran in the New York Times, and a number of you sent it to me and said, "You guys going to talk about this?" And what you don't know is Carter and I had been communicating offline before this, and he was planning on writing an opinion piece to the New York Times on early decision. So when the article popped, he's like, "I guess I don't have to write it anymore," because literally was saying a lot of things that we had been talking about. But, we always believe in sort of point, counterpoint, and trying to bring different perspectives, not teaching you what to think, how to think, and letting you process. In the meantime, one of our members of our listening family, someone who was gracious enough to treat both Vince and I to a really nice dinner when I was out in California last fall, he reached out and sent in a message on early decision with a very different perspective than the article. And so what I'm going to do is read the article. I was going to try to summarize it, but it's just so full of content, I couldn't cut anything. So I'm going to read the article, and then we're going to play Sean's response to the article. So you're going to hear two different perspectives on early decision, and then I'm going to and then I'm going to ask Carter to just weigh in with his thoughts. So in some ways, I was telling Carter when we got on, I'm like, if I was thinking better, I would have invited Sean on the podcast and we could have had a debate. It probably would have been interesting for our listeners. Did you ever hear that debate I did on test scores?
I'm not sure if I did.
Okay. Yeah. Carter's a regular listener. So anyway, let's dive into this article. It literally just came out like a week ago, and it's called "The Early Decision Option is a Racket. Shut It Down." So, and it's by Mr. Curell, who is a deputy undersecretary and senior advisor for the Department of Ed from 18 to 21, and now is a trustee at Gustavus Adolphus College in Minneapolis, St. Paul's area. So, all right, here's the article. This week, about 200,000 applicants to elite colleges will learn the result of their one and only binding early decision bid, which offers by far the best odds of admission. But for those who get in, the news comes with one giant asterisk. Back when they applied, they had to commit to attending the school if they were accepted, without knowing how much financial aid they'd get, without being able to weigh better academic or financial options elsewhere. And for those who don't get in, the news can be crushing. Their silver bullet missed its mark. Until a few years ago, early decision was a niche option offered by a limited number of selective colleges and governed by rules that shielded applicants from aggressive sales tactics. But legal changes in 2019 and a huge increase in applications to selective colleges in 2020, around the pandemic, led more schools to funnel more of their admissions through this channel. Now, many top schools reserve half to 3/4 of their entering class for those willing to submit to these restrictive terms. Other early pathways, like early action and rolling admissions, merely speed up the process without the restrictions. Schools like the early decision track because it allows them to lock down attractive prospects and raise their school's yield, the status bestowing percentage of admitted students who enroll. Applicants put up with it because they feel like they have little choice. It turns the business of applying to colleges into a complex strategy matrix in which students try to game out their chances rather than looking for the school where they're most likely to thrive. Applying to college doesn't have to be this way. Congress should take action now to forbid binding early decision agreements for tax-exempt universities receiving federal aid. State legislatures should bar restrictive early decision practices in their states, as several have done for legacy admissions. The House Judiciary Committee is already investigating the admissions process out of concern that tuition algorithms may violate antitrust law. On a recent trip to Washington, I met with representatives of that committee to explain that strict early admissions agreements are part of the same problem, a tool with which schools, in effect, force families into paying whatever their algorithm determines. Early decision forces 17 and 8-year-olds to make life-altering decisions without comparing options. It scares off middle and low-income households, allowing colleges to pad their budgets with full-pay students while claiming to be need-blind. And it reinforces a cynical transactional approach to higher education that cheapens students and institutions. This year, Erin Schoenbeck of New Prague, Minnesota, applied to Boston University, her top choice, through the early decision option. Would she have done it if she didn't think it would help her get in? Definitely not, she told me. If it didn't influence my chances of admission, I would have loved to have seen where else I got in. At Boston University, her chances through early decision are 3 times as likely as through the less restrictive options. Elsewhere, the numbers are even more skewed. If you want to get into Amherst, signing away your chance to consider other options gives you an almost 4-fold advantage. At Tulane, the advantage is 5-fold. At Northwestern, it's more than 10-fold. Ms. Schoenbeck told me she'd be thrilled if she gets a yes from Boston University, but that on balance, I think it would be better for students if the whole system ran on regular decision. As she put it, I'm only 17. At the end of the day, I'm still a kid. I get why schools do early decision, but asking a 17-year-old to sign an agreement that could obligate them to pay $80,000 a year is really, really a big ask. As of this writing, she's still waiting to hear the school's verdict. The early decision agreement that students, parents, and high school counselors must all sign states that a student must attend the college if accepted. But it hints at an exception if, even with financial aid, the cost of attending is still too high for the student to afford. The thing is, says Mark Salisbury, an expert on how financial aid and admissions interact, the school gets to decide what qualifies as too high. A spokesman for Tulane told me that of the people it admitted by early decision last year, it released around 10% from that obligation for financial reasons. But applicants don't know in advance how that will play out. Because there's so much uncertainty, families with high incomes are more likely to choose early decision and therefore benefit from its more favorable odds. It's the perfect tool for maximizing revenue at schools positioned as luxury products with price tags to match. If you're filling half your class through early decision, and most of those kids are full pay or close to it, you're really not need blind, says Sarah Harbison. The system pits the interest of teenage novices against those of powerful institutions that pay huge salaries to admission leaders to maximize the school's advantage at every turn. It's not even clear that the early decision agreement would hold up in court, and a lawsuit now challenges the whole approach on the grounds that it violates antitrust law. If colleges claim these contracts are binding when they're really not, it's a substantial misrepresentation. In any case, the implied threat is terrifying. Tulane has found a way to make the process scarier still. After a few applicants reported reneging on their commitments, Tulane responded by blacklisting the student's next high school's graduating class from its early decisions admissions round. This kind of payback is the stuff of mob movies. We shouldn't see it from tax-exempt nonprofit universities. In spite of this, or perhaps because of this, early decision is spreading, even among some colleges that accept more than 80% of all applicants, likely because it makes them appear more selective. It's also catching on in public universities, almost all of which had previously steered clear. This year, the University of Michigan offered binding early decision for the first time, joining the University of Virginia, which reinstated the practice in 2019 after having discontinued it as a barrier to qualified low-income students. American colleges face a daunting array of challenges. Federal research grants have been slashed. The number of college, high school seniors is declining. Artificial intelligence has undermined academic honor codes. Faculty members worry that their institutions are in a race to the bottom that ends in a diploma for cash trade. Running admissions like a high-class casino is not the solution. Applicants should be able to weigh multiple options before deciding where to spend the next 4 years of their lives. Killing early decision would benefit students and schools and be a small but important step toward revitalizing a culture of learning on our campuses. All right, that's Daniel Curel, a lawyer and consultant with the Deputy Undersecretary to the Department of Ed from 2018 to 2021, and now a trustee in a Minnesota small private college. All right, so I know you probably have a lot of thoughts there, Carter. Your head is buzzing. Sure. But rather than have you comment on that and then play Sean's response, I think I'll just play Sean's response now, and then I'm just going to let you take the conversation where you want to go with it. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Hey, Mark, Hillary, Vince, and team. This is Sean Elliott from Los Angeles. Thanks for all you do. I wanted to give a quick response to your early decision episode. I completely understand and acknowledge all the limitations and downsides of early decision, and I thought the episode was great. I just wanted to add a little perspective and nuance from the parent side after going through the process when my daughter Paige got into Cornell early decision. We talk so much about the mental health of our kids, the grind, the hours, the unrelenting stress, the pressure of the college process, and how little time they have to actually be teens. One of the biggest and most underrated benefits of early decision is that it gives a student 8 full months of freedom, 8 months with the stress off their shoulders. And there's really no downside. If they don't get in early decision, they're in the exact same place they would have been in anyway, regular decision, but they actually have their applications done early. If they do get in, everything changes. They know where they're going. The pressure comes off. Their grade calculus changes just enough to let them breathe. And the kids who get into these schools aren't going to suddenly stop trying. I also push back on the idea that early decision is somehow unethical or immoral because kids can't make that decision at that age. They're making the exact same decision in March or April. Making it a few months earlier is not some fundamental difference. One last thing, and this won't apply to everyone, but it mattered deeply for us. My daughter Paige was at Pali High when the Palisades burned. That meant her house, her school, her whole town burned. Because she was already in college and knew where she was going, she was able to breathe free. She could car camp in Bishop. She could rock climb. She could ski and do Zoom school. And then she traveled through hostels around Europe during the summer. She actually had a chance to be a kid and be free during a really hard moment. That freedom mattered immensely to her. So I'd really encourage parents to think about that side of early decision. The grind is mostly sophomore through first semester senior year. Early decision clears the entire second half of the senior year and the summer ahead, and that can be incredibly great for the mental health of our kids. Thanks so much for all you do.
All right, Carter, you can take this wherever you want to go. I guess before I have you talk, you certainly were part of early decision at Pomona, right? You experienced that, so you've been on the admission side.
It's true.
You know the advantage it confers to applicants.
Yes.
Take it where you want to go with it.
Well, not only does it confer an advantage abstractly, as the article pointed out, that that advantage can be quantified. And I think through a variety of tools that we have now, we can really see very plainly how much difference in a student's odds there are between applying in regular decision and early decision. One of the tools that we have at our school is SCORE. I'm sure, Mark, you're familiar with it, and probably several of your listeners. It's like Naviance for document sending and helping the list creation. SCORE last year introduced a feature called SCORE AI. And with SCORE AI, I don't know, Mark, have you seen this feature before?
I have. SCORE is a Westchester, Pennsylvania company. So anytime where Westtown is, so anytime someone says SCORE, I kind of smile at it was a dad. You may know the history. It was a dad, and he was upset with Naviance, and he was a tech guy, and he said he thinks he could do something better. And it was only about 12 years ago, but it's taken off.
It really has. And I'm so impressed with the AI feature that they have, and it allows us with a little bit of data about a particular student, including their background information, first gen status or not, GPA, test scores, to really be able to see their percentage odds of getting in through various admission rounds. And so I can sit there with a student that I'm working with and be able to say, well, if you apply in regular decision to this school, you have a 19% chance of admission. But if you apply through early decision, you have a 58% chance of admission. Something like that, I think, has really made it tangible in the last couple of years for us as counselors and for students that are applying to these places to really feel that pressure. And the author of the article in the New York Times referenced the strategy matrix. I feel like I talk about with my colleagues all the time how I wish that I had studied game theory in college, because it is so much of what I do is try to game out these different options with students, these different possibilities, help them understand the opportunity cost, what they're sacrificing if they decide to ED to a particular place, or if they decide not to early decision at all. And I think one of the things that that the article does, the article talks about, a lot of the inequities of the system. I think a lot of the conversation that we've had has been around the inequities of early decision. And I think we need to be talking more about the mental health impacts. For students to be so focused on strategy is actually detrimental to adolescent development. Students need the space and the opportunity to be able to learn about, what they want and who they are. And when they are so cognizant of how important strategy is, they are no longer feeling like the authors of their own lives. I would say the colleges become the authors for them, saying, like, here is what you need to do in order to be admitted into our club. Regarding the call from Sean, the listener, I really am so glad that the process worked out well for him and his daughter. And there are certainly students that can benefit from that. One of the things that really struck me with his voicemail was that he kind of yada-yada'd over the grind being sophomore year through the fall of senior year. That's 2.5 years. And for a 17-year-old, that's a really significant portion of their life up to that point that has turned into such a relentless grind. And I think for those of us who are now parents, I'm the parent of a 5-year-old, so nowhere near this age yet. But it's different from when we were in college so much. And you see it, I think, through what our students are experiencing. And it's not the students' fault. The students are being incentivized to push themselves harder and harder every year as the admit rates go down. And early decision is a major factor in those rates going down. And so it's not just the decision-making process from, October, I would say, where students are making their final decisions around ED versus April, where students have to finalize their college choice. Leaving aside that 6 months is in and of itself a lengthy period of time for an adolescent in terms of their development. But the entire process has been dragged forward in terms of its time period. The grades in junior year and in sophomore year matter so much more because so many students are applying early decision in these high achieving schools and communities. That means that their fall first quarter grades matter so much, but their fall senior year grades may not. They don't know until it's almost too late to do anything about them. And so the extension of that stress point, the incentive to come to a decision in terms of foreclosing on their identity development earlier than before, I really think that it's a major driver of of harm in, for students who are aiming for these really wonderful but selective institutions.
So let me push back a bit. What would you say to the person who says, it'd be nice to have a life of no stress, but stress is a part of life. Like it's going to be a grind if you study for the LSAT or if you study for the MCAT or CPA exam or on and on and on. Like that's kind of part of life, going through a phase where you have a grind.
Yeah, it's certainly something that you hear when this conversation comes up. And I would say, a couple of things. One is that the LSAT, the MCAT, CPA exams, those all happen when you're older, right? So, often 21, 22, 23, that's a big difference in terms of development, identity development, brain development, all of that, as compared to 15, 16, and 17.
Can I stop you for a sec? So what if I used a different example? Well, I'm trying to make this top AAU basketball team, and it's going to be hard. And so I'm going to have to work with my trainer. I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to do that if I think I'm going to make the team. Or it could even be the school team. It could even be varsity. Like that's, there's other things in life that have stress, and sort of stress is part of life kind of argument.
Yeah, that's true. And that's an interesting comparison that I haven't thought about before. But what jumps to mind immediately in terms of the difference is I think, I never went for an AAU basketball team, but I would, but I would say that first, I think you probably have more control over your outcome in terms of the skills that you can work on and build. I don't know that there's a direct correlation in selective college admissions between being admitted and the skills that you've cultivated and are bringing to the table. There's so many institutional priorities involved in a decision there. And that leads me to the other thing that I think about is the transparency. I think if you're cut from a team, you can get feedback as to why. You can continue to grow and develop and try to achieve your goal. If you're denied from a college, you have no idea. I have no idea why my students are denied from a college. I have my educated guesses in many cases, but we can't know for sure. It's not an educational experience being denied from a college the way that being denied from a team might be. And I feel like it impacts many more students. Anyone trying to get into these highly selective schools, which, as we heard from the article, is hundreds of thousands of young people every year. It's so pervasive in our culture that it feels different to me. And one of the things I was going to say with the original question also is to highlight the difference between acute stress and chronic stress. I think that acute stress is the kind of thing that again can be a tool for growth and for learning. As you note, like stress happens, people need to know how to navigate stressful situations. If it's chronic stress, if students are going through entire years of their high school experience feeling the weight of the college process looming over them, and the pressure to perform for these hidden judges, then that can be extremely detrimental and lead to negative mental health and well-being outcomes.
Yeah, I'm tip my hand here. Like I feel like I'm probably in between you and Sean in terms of where I come down on this. One of the things that Sean said in there, and I can attest, you've heard this before from me, Carter, like my oldest daughter, ED to Davidson. One of the things Sean mentioned, and I will attest to this, like one of the nice things if you get in ED is it actually can relieve stress, because to know where you're going by mid-December makes the senior year so much more chill. And he talked about this too. While schools will rescind if if your grades are really, I had a student I worked with from Florida who got rescinded from Pomona because of grade dippage. But that has to be a pretty bad drop off, right? Like if you go from a straight A student to a student, let's say, that has 4 B's and an A, you're not going to get rescinded. Like,
I'm going to tell my students who might be listening to this, please keep your grades up.
yes, don't hear that section.
Yeah,
You don't want to get, I did a counseling situation for somebody last year for UVA who was sweating bullets because they did get that notice of, hey, what's going on here? We need a statement and an essay to explain this grade drop off. And
it does have to be a pretty big drop off.
Correct. You agree with me. You agree with me. So like that, because Sean brought this up as one of the points he was making, and I do see that when I tout the pros and cons of ED, I do count one of the pros is if you get in. Of course, there's a lot of caveats. If you get in and you like your package and you've done enough research so that you've picked a school that's a good fit, then it really can make the senior year less stressful, partly the grade pressure and partly just knowing where you're going. The reason why I consider myself closer to you than what Sean said, I think the biggest argument against early decision is the equity argument. And Sean knows this because I've said it to him and I'll say it to you. Like, there's a lot of people that aren't coming from well-resourced families and are able to visit schools and know if they're comfortable or even know about ED or even get your SATs done and get your application. I mean, sometimes when I work with kids in public schools, if I'm doing some pro bono work, I mean, I have to take a double take because I might say something like, yeah, the FAFSA, what's FAFSA? Or I'll say, yeah, or, what's early action? Like, you forget. And back in the days when there were subject tests, nobody knew what subject tests were. They barely knew what the SAT timeline. I mean, yeah. So there is an assumption of privilege to be able to do ED. First of all, just to be able to make the financial commitment, to make the commitment and not to have to compare finances. That requires a huge amount of privilege, let alone to be able to get your application together in time to be competitive at these schools. There's almost always substantial privilege built in unless somebody's working with CBOs, and that's a small percentage of the very small percentage of the population. To me, those are the strongest arguments against ED, and those are the reasons why most public schools don't do it. This is the reason why Virginia Tech had it and dropped it. Read the statement why they dropped it. It's not an equitable system. We're collecting tax dollars from everybody, and then we're created an admission system that gives preference to people that don't need to compare financial aid offers. To me, that is the really strong, compelling reason. And I know you agree with me on every single thing I said there.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with all of that. The equity discrepancies, I think, are obvious at this point. We definitely know, and I think even when people have the information that they can get through CBOs or independent schools or through independent counselors, they're still at a disadvantage if money is a driving force for them, as it is for the vast majority of college-going seniors in America. So that's absolutely a strong case. I think.
Comment on that more, Carter. I think you probably.
Sure.
I think that some of what you said might have gone over people's head.
Okay.
Unpack it all you meant. Were you partly referring to? Need aware schools? Is that part of it embedded in part of what you were talking about, or where schools travel to and targeting areas which are well resourced so certain people get access? I mean, there's a lot in there.
There's all of that for sure. But I think about, students that I've worked with in independent school settings, and I can say things like, if the financial aid package doesn't meet your need fully, we can pull out of the commitment,
Sure.
or I can say, look at the huge advantage that this confers for you. This school might be available to you in early decision, but probably won't be in regular decision or even in early action. And students can hear and know all of that and still not feel financially capable of committing to a school without seeing the financial aid packages. The idea that we're asking students and families to make this massive commitment before they even know how much money they're going to have to spend is mind-blowing. We don't do that anywhere else in our society. And it's very difficult conversation to have with a student or a parent who wants to compare financial aid packages, and for me to say there's not going to be a financial aid package from this school to compare if you don't apply early decision. But even so, often students and families' hands can be tied, and they'll make the choice of waiting to see what sorts of options they get. They feel like they're betting on themselves, and they are, but they don't see how the institutional priorities are stacked so heavily against them.
No, I think all of that is well said. So how does this impact your counseling? So do you feel like I still encourage some people to apply ED because the system is what it is, and as long as the system is this way and it's important to you in your mind to go to a highly selective school, then I'm going to tell you, like, you're someone, money's not an issue for you. You've researched the school, you've vetted it, like, you're open to it. I approve it. I approve it for you, but I sort of the whole, I'll sign off on this as a counselor, but I'm doing it plugging my nose. Like, is that kind of your approach, or do you go to the point of trying to talk families out of ED, even if they want to do it and money's not an issue and they've researched the school? Like, how does this impact your counseling?
No, in terms of my counseling practice in the independent schools that I've been at over the last decade, we all use early decision.
Yeah.
I still advocate it for the students because at the end of the day, if they are passionate about a particular institution or a particular group of institutions, the advantage to applying early is too great to overlook. I will often remind students and families, you don't have to apply ED. You don't have to apply ED2. I think that's another thing people feel like they have to use. And even so, I also want them to know if you don't apply ED, your odds are going to be cut not in half, but you're going to have like a quarter of the odds of getting into this institution that you, at this moment in time, really think that you want to be admitted to. And so, everywhere I've been, students are definitely still, wrestling with whether they want to apply early decision. I think almost before they even find a school that they love,
Sure.
they know that that's something that they need in their minds. I should say they think that that's something that they should be looking at. And I get why. They're incentivized to look at it by the colleges.
Friends, this concludes part 1 of 3 of my conversation with Carter Delloro about the merits of early decision. We hope you'll join us on Thursday for part 2 of 3. Friends, this episode is recorded, done, submitted hours ago. And then I flipped the TV on and I learned about 2 despicable incidents. One is a gunman on the loose at Brown University. 2 people already killed, the community on lockdown. And then the other one, all the way in Sydney, Australia, an anti-Semitic terrorist attack during Hanukkah, killing 12, injuring 29. And, my heart is just heavy. Thoughts and prayers and tears are important because compassion matters. But we've got to do something about these gun killings and the hate worldwide. This has to stop. There was a time you never saw gun murders in Australia. So anyway, I just wanted to acknowledge anybody who's feeling pain, who's connected to the Brown community or the Jewish community. And anyway, let's transition to the final part of my interview with Evan.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, we've reached the final part of my interview with Evan Mandery. And in part 3, Evan and I spent almost the entire segment debating whether you need to go to an elite college to have limitless career opportunities. We started with this last week when we pick up where we left off. And he says some things that we totally agree with and other things I push back on. I think you're going to find it interesting. And honestly, the truth is probably somewhere in between his view and my view. Evan shares with us what some of his next writing projects are that he's working on. Evan shares some concerns about where our country's at right now. And Evan closes by just picking my brain about my own kids and their own educational journeys. Listen and enjoy. I believe there's a combination of character traits, and it's like motivation, drive, integrity, networking, good communication skills, grit, resiliency, discipline, kindness, doing something you love and doing something you're good at. And you put all of that together. Now, it does help having, let's just say, middle class roots, because then there's like resources that are there, as opposed to you're making 50,000, your parents are first gen and you're poor. You know, like that's the kids that you're seeing every day, and they don't have, you know, families that can take them all across the country to visit colleges or do different things like that. That things that, you know, have you read the book? It's a fascinating book. If you haven't, you would love it. Annette Lareau's book.
Oh, of course. I interviewed Annette Lareau for Poison Ivy.
Yeah, she's
great.
It's one of the most transformational books I've ever read. For those of you who don't know what we're talking about, it's called Unequal Childhoods.
Yep.
So she literally spent time in the house of a number of third graders living in their homes for about a day, upper class, middle class, working class, underclass, and then followed them 10 years later and wrote the sequel. And it's a fascinating book at the correlation between class and outcomes and how child rearing sets people up for certain things. So, you know, some of what I'm talking about is a lot easier if you're not coming from underclass or even not coming from working class even. Because there's a lot of middle class privileges and access and norms and things that are built in if you're you know, but I believe if you have all that with those things, the sky's the limit. And there are very, very few jobs that you can't do well at if you're scrappy and you have all that. And it's funny, I told you before about my students. I also look at 25 years of doing this and who's crushing it out there. And a lot of the kids that are crushing it out there, they didn't go to elite schools. They didn't have high test scores. But I look back, those kids had drive, motivation, people skills, communication skills, discipline. And if you looked at their SAT score and you looked at what they were doing now, there's like no correlation. Thoughts?
Oh, I have a lot of thoughts. I like the Hamilton reference. I'm an unpaid, really good amateur college counselor. I mean, I know a lot. And so the first thing I'll say is I agree with your instinct, where I really resonate with that instinct is I'll say to somebody, okay, I don't want to single out a middle tier college, but you throw one out there.
You know, in the private realm or the public realm?
Private realm.
You know, Franklin and Marshall.
Okay, fine. Would I go $300,000 in debt to go to Franklin to get a Franklin and Marshall degree? No, that doesn't make sense to me. You know, if my kid could go to Rutgers, if the choice was Rutgers versus Franklin and Marshall, I mean, it'll be like, keep the $250,000 and buy a house. Now, if the choice is Rutgers or Brown, I think it's a harder choice. And I think you structured it correctly. It could end up being worthless. So there are a lot of things that you could choose to do with your Brown degree that you could have done with your Rutgers degree. But there are, and, you know, I'm sure you're advising many of these people, like, you know, I kind of regret in retrospect that I wasn't more ambitious with a clerkship. I actually think I should have really tried to be climbing in that regard. So I do think there's a type of access to the elite that there's, you know, whatever. Most of them are jerks, so it's not like I'm really wanted, but I think that's hard. It's hard to get access to. And then I do think those degrees, the data bears this out, they're basically complete insurance policies against significant downward mobility. So if you go to Harvard or Yale or Brown or Princeton, you're going to finish unless you leave to, you know, start a startup or you suffer some type of mental illness or something like that. and you're not going to be poor. I mean, even I'm not poor.
But just look at entrepreneurship. Doesn't matter where you go to college.
You read Bruni's book, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like Bruni's book. I thought I heard you say you were critical of it. Did I catch that right?
Yeah. I don't like the book because I don't.
Yeah, tell me why. I'm surprised. I would think you would like Bruni's book.
Because it's the difference between the description and the prescription. It's sure if you become, there are many entrepreneurs, sure you could go to Franklin and Marshall and be an entrepreneur and you could succeed. But that doesn't mean, I think he's using that argument to relieve Ivy League schools that I do think are gatekeepers to whatever the percentage of occupations that you've described, 1%, 2%, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think it's how you mediate access to that really matters. I think it really matters that, for most of American history, everyone who worked at the New York Times was white. I think it matters. And all those people were coming from the Harvard Crimson and the Yale Daily News. Do I think that's the only thing that matters? But I think it matters a lot.
So do you think one of the things you don't like is that he kind of ends up letting institutions off the hook by implicitly?
Correct.
Yeah, because that's part of what your calling is, or your challenge is to hold these institutions accountable. If you're looking at it from my standpoint, I counsel kids who, when they don't get in an Ivy League school, have not all kids, but this is very common in affluent suburbs and in like New York City private schools and all the private schools across the country. They have a tendency to think the trajectory of my life, I think, just went at a max cap out of B or B plus. I'll never be A plus. That's how they think, and it's ridiculous. And it's so ridiculous. That's how
I completely agree with you about that.
And that's where he's coming from, I believe, because he talks about, I look at the people who got all the Pulitzer Prizes that I wrote with, and look at all the world. There's such a range of schools from all these writers, and he goes through them, and he looks, and so to me, I'm coming at it that way. Okay. Like you are limiting yourself by buying into the canard that if I don't go to an elite school, I've capped my career success.
So I think it's a hard line.
Yeah,
there's a hard line to walk. So I agree with what you're saying. I don't think if you merely get into Johns Hopkins instead of Brown, of course it's absurd. Your life is going to be fine. But if you said to me, if you came, if you sit in my kitchen table and you're like, I want to write for the New York Times.
Mm-hmm.
Where should I go to college? Well, I'm going to try to get you into Harvard or Yale instead of Franklin and Marshall. Now, does that mean that you couldn't go write for the New York Times if you went to Franklin and Marshall? Of course not.
Mm-hmm.
But are your odds significantly better? There are feeders. There's still feeders. I mean,
sure.
when I look back on my life, like one of my real regrets or what ifs. So I did stand-up comedy for a long time.
I didn't know that.
How would you? And
you haven't cracked any jokes on me yet.
I tried.
And I didn't get a rise out of me, so you quit.
Yeah, you were too even keeled. But okay, Conan O'Brien is Conan O'Brien because of Harvard. I mean, Conan O'Brien wrote. He worked for the Harvard Lampoon, conduit to Saturday Night Live. Sure, David Letterman went to Ball State. There were other ways to get there. But those writers' rooms, there's a network that gets you there.
And I wouldn't deny that there's some advantages of being seen as having that imprimatur of you're smart. I actually have an example of that. When I'm sure KIPP, KIPP schools all across the country, KIPP charter schools. Yeah, so I worked there for 14 years.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Doing college placement and that. So my boss left. We had to hire somebody. And my boss's boss picked a Vanderbilt alum and told me, when I looked at all these resumes, I saw Vanderbilt, and to me that signals something.
Of course.
So this is kind of what you're talking about. Because I don't think that way. Because the way I look at it is,
right.
You might go to John Jay or whatever because your family doesn't have the money. That's not an indication of your, like people choose colleges for all kinds. So I don't I've never been a school snob. I don't look at where you went to school and make judgments that way, because there's lots of reasons why people go to lots of different schools, and talent comes from everywhere. And that's just what I believe.
Yeah, I agree with you. But at the same time, it's true. So like if somebody came to you and said, you know what, Mark, I want to be a Rhodes Scholar. That's my whole goal in life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you really, really better try to get that kid into an Ivy League school. Could they still get it from flagship state university? Could they go to Wisconsin and be the top person in Wisconsin? Absolutely. But they're going to be competing with the kid from Wisconsin who got into Harvard. And, you know, it's exactly what you said. It's, you know, the imprimatur, it's a beauty pageant like that. It matters. It's not deterministic. I don't think that, you know, when you win a beauty pageant that it changes anything about you. I won an Emmy Award, and first thing I was like, well, I'm not a better writer today than I was yesterday. I'm just exactly the same. It's completely arbitrary. But again, my argument is about the institutions whom the institutions confer this imprimatur of intelligence or bestow this credibility upon has consequences for what society looks like. And there are just spaces, you know, when you look at it through a race angle, there are just spaces that completely underrepresent, you know, voices of color because they've just been completely excluded from these spaces. And I'd see most things through a class lens. And I'm just like, if I said this to you last time, but I'm like, hey, you know, if there was actually a poor person on the who worked at Goldman Sachs, does maybe somebody say, oh, the subprime loan idea, that's actually real people that we're exploiting? Like, I just don't think it happens.
Do you know what college has the most current Fortune 500 CEOs?
I love trivia and I love guessing games. Hold on. What college is most represented among Fortune 500 CEOs? Okay. It's a trick question because it's going to be a function of size of the college. So we need a big college. University of Michigan.
Wisconsin-Madison.
But come on, that's a good guess, right? I mean, really, I basically got it right.
Well, but I brought it up because you used Wisconsin.
It's not generous. It's not generous.
You used Wisconsin in a context of like, you're not going here from there. And that, like, and I intentionally picked one of the hardest things. I think we would agree, Fortune 500 CEOs. Now, don't get me wrong, like Harvard and those schools are very well represented, more represented than their population. But I just don't see very many jobs that you're hindered by if you don't end up going there to these places. You know, and even think about it, like working for the New York Times. What percentage of people work for the New York Times, right?
Sure, I've said I agree with that. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you want to? I have the internet here.
Okay.
How many people who went to University of Wisconsin won a Rhodes Scholarship? It's a good number.
Yeah.
32.
See, this proves your point.
And Harvard, 385.
Sure. But what I would push back and say, well, I'll even ask you, how many people win Rhodes Scholars every year? Is it 32? Is that the number?
Don't they give? Oh, I'm thinking of Truman's. I think you're ballpark right. Yeah.
So what's that? 0.000001? Yeah. So like when I look at
you're right, 32.
32. Yeah. So when I look at most jobs out there, I just don't see it as, you know, I think class things that Leroux talks about that don't introduce you into networks. And you talk about this in your article. In fact, why don't you comment on that? You talk about how kids from under-resourced environments get into, you know, the milieu of these, you know, Wall Street cultures, and they don't survive the test. Why don't you talk about that? Because our listeners haven't read the article. It was interesting.
Can I just say first, I just want to say, you and I agree.
Yeah.
And the way I'll always say this is, do I think admissions to elite colleges is the most important issue in American higher education? Of course not. I think the underfunding of public colleges matters orders of magnitude more. It's way more important that the University of Wisconsin system is robust and accessible, right? Because it's just educating so many more people. At the same time,
Mm-hmm.
Could anybody watching what's going on in America not pause and think, I don't think those people in Appalachia actually trust the elites. I mean, something's gone wrong about the construction of the elite. And it's just unrebuttable because, the core of their critiques they're fair. The elite is inaccessible. The elite is intellectually hegemonic, right? It's intolerant of,
Yeah. And I love what you're doing, challenging them. Just so you know, I love it.
I felt the love.
No, I'm coming from a world where I see kids depressed, having, all kinds of mental health issues, feeling less than because they never got in a T20 school. And it's the most ridiculous thing in the world because, like I oftentimes use this example. Let's say you like basketball. Are you going to judge yourself as a failure because you never made the NBA All-Star game? Yep. But this is what I see, the pressures mounting on kids, especially in affluent suburban schools and in private or independent schools, that, they've created this construct that if I don't go to quote unquote a T20 school, then I'm a personal failure. And now when you think you're a failure, you're going to be a failure. So,
I'm completely.
And by the way, I went to Michigan State. It's a school that has a high acceptance rate. Sure, it's got lots of people that have, lots of strong programs and has produced a lot of very, very successful people. But it's not the University of Michigan, and it's not Yale, and it's not a bumper sticker sweatshirt school. I have never felt limited in any way, shape, or form by the fact that I don't have an elite pedigree. Not in the slightest.
Where where we're going back and forth in this is, you're a counselor, you're helping individuals. And I think your advice is exactly right. It's exactly what I would say. It is what I say. I'm a critic of institutions.
Yeah.
Like
well
I don't like that. I don't like that we live in a universe where somebody applying to college feels devalued because, their mom or dad didn't go to Harvard or Yale, and they really just don't, what do they have at the best case, a 2% chance of getting in? The other thing you asked about, so since we've compiled a reading list for your listeners, it's Anthony Abraham Jack's book, The Doubly Disadvantaged. It's a great book. And Lauren Rivera gets this in her book too. I mean, you have real differences in how people navigate these spaces once they manage to get in. So I have a student right now. She's at Berkeley Law School. She's incredible. She's a young woman of color, but she grew up dirt poor, abusive household. And she's completely alone at Berkeley. No friends whatsoever. I mean, I was like, what's the N of you there? And she's like, I don't know, 2 in my class. And the other person's not in my section. I think it's tough. So.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's really important what you brought up. We're taking on different forces out there that can have a deleterious impact on society. And we're just in different lanes, and we're both concerned about justice and equity and opportunity and fairness.
I'm often in your lane, Mark. I mean, when I'm talking to individuals, including my kids, I'm going to be like, don't take any aspect of this personally. These are, this is just odds. It's effectively random. It has nothing to do with who you actually are. It's not going to make that much a difference in your life. I would say if you wanted to go to be a lawyer, where you go to law school still matters.
Sure.
For access to certain types of jobs. But I think you're right. It just doesn't matter for most things.
I'm going to send you a podcast I think you'll find fascinating. I had 2 partners of law firms, one at a, I always forget the term. What do you call the terms for the big, not the
white shoe firms?
Not white shoe, big law, right? One's a partner at a big law firm, and one went a different direction. Started his own public law firm, one East Coast, one West Coast, And what I did was I invited 5 students who are aspiring lawyers, 3 high school seniors, 1 college junior, and 1 student at Boston University, law school, in BU Law, to ask these 2 attorneys questions about law. And so all of these questions came up. Doesn't matter where you go. It was fascinating, and I think you'll find it fascinating as a former lawyer,
I will. But
yeah.
When I give my talk about my book, I always play this clip from Scalia's speaking at, I think it's George Mason Law School. And this woman asks him this question: what do I have to do to be outrageously successful in the law? She wants to be a Supreme Court law clerk. Mm-hmm. And he goes, just be good and study hard. And then he's like, no, seriously. And he basically says, you have no chance of ever being a Supreme Court law clerk. Right, but you're right.
Yeah.
Most people don't care about that and shouldn't care about it. I think you're right. But does it matter to society who those people are? It does.
Yeah. Yeah. This has been great. I really appreciate it, your candor. I love how you think. Any closing thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Well, you're a good man, Mark. I think your message is more important. I mean, I just think it's an absurd system.
Yeah, I wouldn't say more important, but I think it's more relevant to the masses.
Certainly relevant to the people that you're listening to.
But I mean, the average kid, who's the average person, right, is thinking about wanting to have a good life and better themselves. And what can I do? And if they believe the sky's the limit and they have agency over so many different things about their future, and they're not limited because they didn't go to Designer U, that's going to result in much, much, much better outcomes. But what you're doing is also important because of the role that these institutions play in society. And if you can chip away at,
what it feels like to me? Here, see how this metaphor lands for you. I thought it was really important that Augusta National desegregate.
Yeah.
I'll never play at Augusta. They only have like 100 or 200 members. And still, I thought it was really important. Symbolically, I thought it was important that, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, who belong there, maybe once or twice in their life, actually, I think it's good that they interacted with Condoleezza Rice or whatever. That's what it feels like. They're luxury spaces.
So, friends, Evan gave us a great analogy, which I thought was fair, a metaphor, really, about Augusta National. And I've been thinking long and hard about this, like, does it really matter where you go to college conversation? So I have my own analogy. So if you are working on assembling a bicycle, there's a lot of different things you can use to assemble the bicycle. You could use an Allen key or a hex wrench. You could use open-ended wrenches. You could use a torque wrench. You could use a chain tool. You could use a screwdriver or a pedal or spoke wrench or tire levers or even cable cutters. Those are all different ways you could assemble a bicycle. So this is my take. Some of the people that I have worked with in my professional counseling career who have gone to elite colleges, the Stanfords, the Harvards, the Yales, the Princetons, the MITs, and others as well, right? That's not the only list. We could go on with many, many others, whether it's UPenn or Rice or Northwestern. I can't list them all here. They are some of the people that actually feel the strongest about how it has helped their career. And the reason I believe this is true is because somewhere along the line, somebody said to them, I really wanted to hire a Harvard guy, or, I think it's great that you went to Yale, like our clients like this, or, they've heard this. So in their mind, ipso facto, right? Like I have concrete proof, like I've literally been told that the designer degree played a role in me getting the opportunity that I got. But here's the thing. Someone else, I got to put myself in this category, has been told over and over, like, you crushed the interview. Like, we loved your interview skills. Someone else is told, we just love it that you were trilingual. That's amazing. Like, we could really use someone who speaks different languages in our company. You know, someone else is told that, you know, you just had these really unique experiences. Like, you went overseas, you know, for a year when you were like 8, and then you went back for 2 years later again when you were like 21. And I just think that's really kind of cool, really kind of neat. I think I've shared this story with you before. One of a former client of mine from Colorado, he had a big company and hired hundreds of people. And he told me, I look for people that have, like, at a very young age, gone to different places in the world. I think it says something about a kind of person who would do something like that. So somebody else is told that, right? And then someone else is told, like, your network, we just absolutely love your network. I mean, you came here and you brought a Rolodex of contacts with you. Like, you just got this like incredible, sensational network. Someone else hears about their communication skills or their passion or their positive attitude. So, like, in their mind, all of those things are like the key to their success. So what's right? What's wrong? The reality is they're all right, right? So, like, the elite degree, that's like the Allen key. The great communication skills in the interview, that's like the torque wrench for assembling the bicycle together. The person who's trilingual, that's the screwdriver, right? Person that's had the unique experience, that's the spoke wrench or the pedal wrench. And the point is, there's more than one way to assemble a bike. And different people bring different skill sets or experiences that are like the wrenches or the Allen key or the torque wrench or the screwdriver that put the bike together. And that's my view of things. And that's one reason why I don't have this view that some people have about having to go to Designer U. I just think it's kind of like a map, right? Like, there's different paths to get you to your destination. Like, I used to, when I'd go into Peachtree City, which I go a lot here, I used to take the main way, the most direct way all the time. Then I discovered the back roads. Now I like the back roads. They both get me to my destination. It's not like one's right and one's wrong. Those are just my thoughts. Hopefully you found this helpful.
But I think it matters how people move through luxury spaces. And anyway, how did that land with you? Did you like the Augusta one?
Yeah, it's good.
Oh,
what's your next article, book, subject? What's percolating in your mind over there?
All right. Next, so I'm pretty far into reporting on this school called University of Austin, Texas, which is like Free Speech U. I write a lot about civil libertarian stuff. I really like how you think about just kind of dialogue. Then I'm thinking about writing something about a specific type of autism called systems orientation, which I think explains a lot in the world. And then I'm working on a book about a Supreme Court case called McCleskey versus Kemp, which was a challenge to the death penalty based on statistical evidence of racism in Georgia. And it was 5-4, the wrong way. And one vote different would have accelerated the conversation about race in racism in criminal justice in America by 25 years.
Wow.
So that's next.
And do you think that, does it look to you like the Supreme Court's going to completely gut the Voting Rights Act? I mean, that's what it's looking like from my vantage point, but I'm not a lawyer, and, you know, and what are the ramifications if they do? Do you delve in that as someone
sure.
who?
Yeah. I am sorry. I don't know if people are still listening. I'm really, really pretty scared and pessimistic about where we are right now as a country. So, yeah, I see no reason other than to expect the worst. And, the gerrymandering stuff is disastrous. There's so many structural changes that are happening that are going to be very, very difficult to reverse.
I hear you. Yeah, that's such a depressing topic. Let's get off of it.
Yeah.
It's like, I can only take so much of that, you know?
Same. My wife stopped listening to news, and
it's hard. We all have to keep our mental sanity, you know? And
is it okay can I ask you a question?
Of course you can.
I was interested in what you said about Davidson. So you really like it. Yeah.
Yeah. I love Davidson for a lot of reasons.
I have a good view too, but I'm just curious.
Sure.
Yours. Yeah.
You know, the relationships that faculty and students have with it being 100% residential requirement, the sense of community, how palpable it is. the, they don't look at how they do their eating clubs that are completely different than Princeton, and they're accessible to all, which I think breaks down some of that elite hierarchy and exclusionism. And it's just a place that has high quality education, support, community, a lot of resources. Kids do very, very well there. It's also, like a lot of institutions, it leans left, but it's not extreme. And I think that can be good for developing your thinking, because you'll hear arguments from different sides there. It's safe. The campus is beautiful. It's close to Charlotte. It's got a great location. It's still got that school spirit. If you like that, it's Division I, and people can
Steph Curry.
Steph Curry. You can still have some good old fashioned fun like that for people that are inclined to have that with high academics.
What did your daughter go on to do?
You're gonna love this. You're gonna love this. She her degree's in Spanish. She taught middle and high school Spanish, and then decided that she likes the freedom of, like, she went to studied abroad in Peru and Peruvian universities and stuff.
We spent most of the summer in Peru.
Oh, wow. Cool is that?
Yeah.
So
cool.
She's always been international. Like, by the time she's 18, she'd been Honduras 5 times, Kenya twice. So she decided, I can't have that lifestyle as an in-classroom teacher. So she started a Spanish tutoring company. So she literally can be anywhere, and she travels all over. And as long as she has the internet, she can go on and tutor students. And now it's growing. Now she's bringing math tutors and others under her. So she's kind of living her dream.
Where is she, right?
Davidson Network.
Today?
Yeah, she's in Raleigh. Raleigh. And she's very close with her Davidson Network. Like, this is the kind of place Davidson is like. And I talked about this. I wrote a book in 2016 called 171 Answers to the Most Asked College Admissions Questions. I had illustrations in there. When she did a summer program there and became pretty close with a Spanish professor. And when she was coming to enroll, she reached out to that professor. They met in the union. And that professor gave her a bear hug that lasted 20 seconds that you would think a mother would give a kid that hadn't seen a kid for 3 years. And I'm like, that's the magic of Davidson. Here's another story. She's quite the baker. Like, she went and competed in one of these contests and got on the Great British Bake Off show where they compete and you get, to see who the greatest baker is. So she had to go to England for 6 weeks and all that. So when she was on TV, Davidson alumni threw like community watch parties all around the country. So Davidson alum could gather and watch her. And this is not just her class. This is just like that Davidson bond. One of our own is on this show. Like that magic happens because of living in community. I have a bias toward, I know the great work you're doing at CUNY's and how transformational it is. There is a power in living in a very residential community.
I'm totally with you. I'm
not
sending my kid to CUNY. So.
Right. So that power of that's an example of that, right? There's that bond, and they reached out and they threw watch parties all around the country.
So cool. Where did your other kids go?
Completely different. I have one other one. So that's my 29-year-old.
Sorry.
My 26-year-old went to UGA.
Wow.
And then she got a master's from NC State in clinical mental health counseling, did private practice, didn't like dealing with people that were on the verge of suicide and that all the time, all day, taking those problems home. But she was very fortunate that when she was doing that master's, she was starting to already have some concerns about it. One of her advisors said, I've got a great connection at Duke. Got her in the Duke grad program. She loved doing this work at Duke in a higher ed context. And when she left, Duke said, we're going to hire you. But they didn't have an opening. So she had to go into private practice for a while. She was miserable. Then the same time, back to back, Chapel Hill had an opening and Duke had an opening. She went through. She had opportunities for both. Chapel Hill, she liked it better. She works there. So she works with the I'm in Atlanta. So she's in the Keenan Flagler Business School as a wellness coach. So she does work with the kids that, like, when they had a suicide there, she's got to be there and talk to them. But she also gets to do proactive programming. And she gets to do one international trip every year with the business students. So she just did Thailand 2 weeks. She does South Africa. And she gets to go to a different country every year on UNC's dime. It's pretty good. And she is ecstatic with how happy she is.
That's awesome.
So that's both of them. Yeah, they're that's my joy there, those two. And they're both in education though. Now you don't know this about me. Both my parents were educators. My dad was a chemistry teacher and then an AP for a while, and my mom was an elementary teacher, and my grandmother was. So that's kind of in our blood.
Same for me. My dad was a high school principal. Even when
I was seeing your passion, I was wondering, where's this coming from? And I think a lot of that stuff can come from our upbringings in different ways, right?
For sure.
No?
Well, I'm really glad. It'd be nice to be friends. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah, this has been great, Evan. I want to keep in touch with you and keep speaking truth to power.
Yeah, do my best, but it's a little bit tilting at windmills. You know how it goes, right?
No, I mean, well, see, I'm always railing against emphasizing match and fit over prestige. And boy, do you ever feel like you're swimming upstream, especially in certain communities where what drives me crazy is I'll go to great lengths to find a school that is so aligned with everything you tell me you're looking for. And the whole thing goes down like a deck of cards because someone says, my friends aren't impressed with that name. You know, it's the most frustrating thing in the world. It seems like it's all about the name. Does the name land in a way that impresses people? And
I'm going to pay you super high praise. So my wife, our daughter is a super jazz musician.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife's like, we should talk to a counselor. And I was like, I know as much. I'm actually going to ask you about our daughter. I think you may come up with an out of box idea. I'll reach out to you another time.
Sounds great. Thanks, Evan. Appreciate you. On Thursday's episode, Carter and I will continue because I'm going to play part 2 of 3 on Thursday. After that, we'll have part 2 of 3 of my interview with Matt Carpenter. And what's Matt talking about? How to get the best possible aid award from the colleges that your student applies to. And then we've got a brand new spotlight, and it's also a 3-parter. And it is on the University of Utah. Friends, there's only 2 kinds of people in the world. There are those who say they can, and there's those who say they can't. And friends, here's the key line. Both of them are right. Think about that. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid.website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our international admissions expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Matvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stylionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.